Welcome to another edition of Breaking News brought to you by Source Selection Soundbites. Today, we will discuss the case that involved the interpretation of regulation and agency policy and the interaction between them. In this case, the Department of Health and Human Services regulation prohibited the payment of profits to grant recipients who are for-profit institutions. Since the Small Business Administration Policy Directive provided for payment of a profit to grant recipients in the context of the Small Business Innovation Research Program, the Assistant Secretary for Management and Budget at the Department of Health and Human Services requested a decision on whether profits must be paid, given its current agency policy. The Department of Health and Human Services contended that the SBA does not have authority to require the inclusion of profits in research grants because neither the Small Business Innovation Development Act nor its legislative history explicitly mention payment of profits. The department even cites language in the applicable Senate report describing how cost principles should take into account the importance of providing full and adequate remuneration, as implying that profits are prohibited. Moreover, they continued, in accordance with Black's Law Dictionary, remuneration is defined as payment, reimbursement, reward, recompense, salary, or compensation. So profit is not in the picture. En route to informing HHS of its decision, the GAO noted that the definition of remuneration is flexible enough to encompass payment of profits, whether as a reward or as part of compensation. Without further evidence of what the committee intended by remuneration, the GAO stated it simply could not determine whether or not it intended profits to be paid. GAO continued, "The next question is whether the administration's requirement is based on a permissible construction of the statute." Since the GAO found it to be a viable construction of the statute, they said, "Where, as here, Congress delegates broad authority to an agency to issue regulations implementing a statute, such agency regulations are given controlling weight unless they are arbitrary, capricious, or manifestly contrary to the statute." When the test was applied, the GAO found no basis for concluding that the administration's profit requirement was improper. Lastly, the GAO said, "While we do not question that the department's regulation prohibiting profits retains the force of law in other circumstances, the SBA's policy directive supersedes any contrary regulation because it was issued by an agency specifically authorized by Congress to administer this program. Thus, where required by the SBA, the department should include a fee or profit in grants awarded under its Small Business Innovation Research Program, unless expressly excluded by statute. Now, let's address a few of the lessons learned from this inquiry. They include: 1. Profit must be paid on grants unless agency policy is rooted in a statute. 2. Generally, the policy directive prevails when there is a conflict of regulations. And 3. The agency that has authority to promulgate a regulation to implement a statute is usually given a high level of deference when interpreting statutes and implementing them via regulation. In this episode of Source Selection Soundbites, we discussed the HHS case and how the policy directive and agency regulations interact. This concludes today's Source Selection Soundbite. If this video was helpful, hit the like and subscribe button to ensure you don't miss any new material. If you want more details on the subject, they are available on the Source Selection Answer app. It contains lectures, quizzes, court cases, sample documents, and more material that allows practitioners to quickly obtain actionable knowledge. Thanks for watching. See you next time.